In the ongoing series of outcome-based education, today we will be talking on quality assurance in student affairs and services. This is a very pertinent topic, and the awareness of the student awareness affairs and services is quite less and prevalent as far as the practices and the practical paradigms are concerned. Now let me give you some introduction about what the student affair and support services are all about. Students are at the center of any academic institution, and there is an observation that many universities and higher education institutes have traditionally paid very less attention to the students, and this is definitely a very sad state of affairs. The students who are at the center of the higher education institute are ignored in some way or the other, which leaves the institution, and that is why the institution does not reach the excellence and at the top as far as the quality standards are concerned. Now there are very few exceptions of some countries which focus on the experiences of the students outside the classroom until the middle of 20th century. The concerns about the broader student experiences accompanied the expansion of the higher education starting in much of the world in the middle of 20th century. So that means that overall, if you see the perspective and the practicalities and the application of the outcome-based education as far as the student survey, student support and the student affairs is concerned, it is less prevalent. And of course, the timeline which is mentioned here is also very sad to listen and to observe, that till the middle of the 20th century, it was not practically followed. Definitely, there are many countries which look into this realm, and they are practically doing the consumer as far as the state of the student is concerned, and the concerns about the broader student experiences accompanied the expansion of the higher education starting in much of the world in the middle of the 20th century. Now, we will be talking on the various paradigms as far as the student affairs and support services are concerned. There are so many issues which the students face. They come with a lot of hope when they join the higher education institute. They have the issues of the the academic syllabus. They have the issue of the teaching pedagogies. There is definitely a difference in their diversity. There is an activism which they see. There are psychological issues which they are concerned, and there are n number of the fields and the areas and the paradigms which they face as a student. And definitely this is the core responsibility of any higher education institute to take care of various movements, various issues relating to the students, because the very existence of the higher education institute is because of the students. So if their issues are ignored, if their psychological issues are ignored, if their health and academic issues are ignored, definitely that higher education institute will meet not the success but the failure. So it is definitely stimulated by the growth and the diversity of the students population, the reaction of the student activism, movements, and understanding that the psychological and the social health of the student, they play a very key role in the academic success and the idea of the student development and the field of the student affairs to shape. So when a student joins the organization, any institution, any school, there is definitely a journey which is started, and the journey is all about the psychological, the social, the educational, the economical, and the other paradigms of the development relating to the students. So that is why the shape and the field of the student affairs, they come into play. If you talk about the traditional European university, they paid little attention to the student development studies, and the students were ignored as far as the basic paradigms and their issues are concerned. And the traditional European universities paid little attention to the students' development, and the students were assumed to be adult responsible for their own lives of the classroom. So there is a very important thought process which was prevalent at that time, and specifically I am talking about the European universities, that till the time they are in the institute, they are studying, so the institute is not bothered about the life which is outside the classroom. Because of this strong conviction and the reasoning that the student will be able to handle his life when he is out of the classroom. So definitely when you talk about the student development and the other issues, so any area, any issue which is outside the classroom was not embedded in the student affairs. So this strong conviction and this strong reasoning that the student will be able to handle all the issues was at the core of the student affairs. The student population, it almost exclusively male and small and population. Much rest of the world followed the European academic tradition, either because it was imposed by the colonial rule or the places of Japan in Thailand, and it was chosen freely. So that means every other country, they followed the particular example of the European university, that if they are taking the issues which are outside the classroom, they also followed the overall customers and the overall perspectives of the European community. The same examples are being spillovered in the Japan, in Thailand, and it was freely chosen that the European university are taking care of only the core issues of the academic issues. So they also followed the same issues, and it was prevalent in many other countries besides Europe, Thailand and Japan. Now the main exception which I want to highlight here is the exception, and the pattern was United States, which from the beginning was concerned with the non-classroom life of the students and the idea of parents. So this is a very beautiful feeling and was at the core of the United States higher education institutes, that when the student begins his journey in the academic field and joins the institution, so it is the institution or the higher education or the organization which has to play the role of the parents. So as the parents, they take care of each and every small bit of the issues connected with their child. Similarly, the institution has to also take care of the small issues, the various paradigms which are overall connected and affected by the overall life issues. So the idea of in loco parenti, that is, the university acts as the parents to its students, and it is the base of the use of the American tradition. Thus, from an early period, American colleges and universities, they took the extracurricular life of the students very, very seriously, and they took the role of the parents, as the parents take care of every issue of the student and their own child. Similarly, the organization has to have a basic idea of local parentis, that is, they have to take care of the small issues, the academic issues, the psychological issues and the other issues relating to the student, and they have to take care of the extracurricular activities of the student very, very seriously. Now, in the earlier days, the professor were responsible for the student, later the student affairs professionals to cover this task. The student development and the student affairs are now seen as the key task of the most academic system, as a good reason. So I want to reiterate here that when the concept of the student affairs professional started, before they took over as professionals, the same role of the student affairs was being very nicely played by the professors. So the professors had this feeling of co-parenting, that is the issue of being parents to the students who have joined the organization. But later there was a training given to many teachers, and they were later called as the student affair professionals, wherein each and every part related to the student affairs professionals was given to them, so that they could be catalyst in changing the whole situation and taking care of the student and their each and every aspect connected to their life as far as their academic and the extracurricular activities are concerned. So the professors were swapped by or changed by the student affair professionals. The student development and the student affairs are now seen as the key task of the most academic system, as a good reason. So the basic heart at the core of the higher education institute, is the student development, and the student affairs are now in the center of any good organization as far as the development of the students are concerned. The secondary institutions, they recognized that the academic success depends upon the students who are healthy, motivated and qualified for their studies. So here on the screen we can see the three major factors which are responsible for the ultimate success of the student learning outcomes if the student is healthy, that is, he is not affected by any kind of a disease, he is into healthy eating and overall healthy mind and healthy body. The second is your motivation level. The students have to be motivated to the next level, only then they can perform, and the duties as a student which have been given to them, they should be able to handle it. Not last but not the least here, he has to qualify all his assignments, his test, his quiz and any small parameter which is connected to his academics. So the secondary institutions, they are recognized and they measure the success of the students if a student is healthy, he is motivated and he is able to qualify all his assignments and other parameters relating to his academic performance. Now the importance of focusing on the students and their extracurricular life outside the classroom is center of all higher education institutes. The injunction is based on the World Declaration on Higher Education for the 21st Century adopted by the World Conference on the Higher Education, Vision and Action 1998. So, overall if you see the perspective of when it came into play after the injunction was declared on the Higher Education Institute way back in early 21st century, and it has been adopted by the World Conference on the Higher Education, Vision and Vision Action 1998. So, by the declaration and adoption of the said purpose, this emanates the idea that meeting the students' need through an effective student affair and service program is central to the development of the successful outcomes. When an individual or a student joins the organization, their journey starts with their academic performance, their health performance, their mental performance, their emotional intelligence, their awareness relating to the culture, relating to the different general knowledge which he has. So it is not only the academics which the institution has to provide the service to. The institution has to be very, very inclusive, very broad in taking care of each and every small issue of the support services which the students need. For example, a student joins an English literature course. So definitely nobody is born writer. So a student would be needing the support services as far as the poetry part is concerned, as far as the analysis, explanation part is concerned, as far as the academic writings are concerned. So they are not at the center or as a part of the syllabi that all these support services have to be provided to the students, that some students, they come from the rural background, some students, they do not have a complete knowledge about how to write an article, or they are very, very weak as far as their academic writings are concerned. So then of course the concept of the student affair and the support services, they come into play. So as a matter of fact, all the higher education institute, they have to meet this idea of providing innovative, effective and good services to the students so that the student excels in their field and they are able to achieve the successful outcomes of the education. Now, coming on to the various principles, there are principles, values and the belief that form the basis of the student affair and services. So what are these? They guide as in focusing on the development of appropriate student services, and they comprise the roadmap that is being followed in developing and providing the critical services and the programs necessary to enhance the student learning outcomes and to ensure the student success. So that means what? They are very pertinent as far as the development of their individual intellect and as far as the success of the education services and the educational institutes are concerned. They are at the center. So students will be able to achieve their learning outcomes if they are in a very cozy setup which provides not only achieving their present syllabi outcomes but also the future roadmap, the solutions to the various challenges do they face as far as the information which they need is concerned, as far as the support in the academic writings are concerned, and there are n number and the list is not exhaustive. The entity of the student affairs and the services is increasingly recognized as the professional force of the importance in the higher education around the world. The entrance into a profession will increasingly require the preparation and the training commensurate with the duties to be performed and the national context for the higher education. Now, there are various models of the professional preparation as well as doing professional development that assist the student affairs and the services. The staff is keeping up with the changing student issues and the new skills needed to administer such efforts. The students, when they join the institute, they are into a particular setup which takes care of their needs. There is an industry academia interface, there is a government and academia interface, there is a market and academia interface. So there are so many interfaces which keeps us flexible in terms of incorporating and embedding the various skills which are required for a student to counter such changing paradigm situations. So if the organization is quite prevalent and flexible as far as incorporating those changes is concerned and keeping them into the new skills, then there is no such effort which will go waste and the students will achieve the excellence, they will be able to achieve their learning outcomes and the organization will be on the path of the final success what they are striving for. So here the main concept is what? The main concept is about the changes which are taking place and keeping pace with the changing taking place in the organization and the higher education institute, and of course giving new skills to the students so that they are able to imbibe the new skills, they are able to counter the challenges which have been brought about because of the dynamic changes which are happening around. All the functions in the higher education must be properly managed, including the student affairs and the services. There is an effective use of research, evaluation, assessment, strategic planning, accreditation and the standards in the higher education student affairs and services. Within the context of a student affair services, the vision, mission and operational policies that are congruent and with those of the institution. So there are like safety, security, risk management, the legal aspects of the student affairs and the services. There are recent world events including the terrorism and conflict, the risk and the legal issues which are associated with the health, safety, environment, human rights and are demanding that more attention has to be paid to these areas of student lives and the administration of the student affairs, services and the programs. So all the professions must have a code of the ethical behavior, especially in the field of student affairs profession. What concerns the practitioners they have in relating personally to the students and to each other? What role can a student affair and services professionally play meeting an ethical environment on the campus. So, there are certain guidelines which have been made by UNESCO. So, let us have a look on this. Because of the rise in the number of armed conflicts and the serious disasters, more attention needs to be paid to how the higher education can play a role in the post-conflict disaster regions. The student affairs practitioners can play a vital role in this regard, especially meeting the unique challenges of such countries. This manual has been prepared by UNESCO by International Association of the Student Affairs and Services. The main purpose for the existence of International Association of Student Affairs and Services is to encourage, to support and to enhance the student enrollment so that they are able to be successful in their life, work in career, meet the need of the society, and the effective student affairs and services operational is essential to meet such goals. The World Declaration on Higher Education was adopted in Paris in the year 1998 at the first World Conference on Higher Education sponsored by UNESCO, set forth a vision and guiding principles designing to meet the challenges of 21st century. So there was such a thought-provoking inputs which have been embedded by UNESCO in the manual, and this is so helpful as far as the student affairs and implementing in their lives is concerned, because in the 21st century we are living in so many challenges, and the UNESCO guidelines are the answers for this as far as the student support system and the student affairs systems are concerned. Now, among the principles underlying the World Declaration, though pertinent to the development of the student affairs and services, they include the following. There is an unprecedented demand for and a great diversification in the education, as well as an increased awareness of its vital importance, what socio-cultural and economic development, the career development, the employability, the lifelong capabilities of the students, they are the essential ingredients in these processes. And the sharing of the knowledge, international cooperation and emerging technologies can offer new opportunities to reduce the gap between industrially developed and developing countries regarding access to the resources for the higher education. They can also play in reducing the increasing socio-economic stratification and the differences in educational opportunity within the countries at all levels of wealth and development. Societies have been increasingly knowledge-based so that the higher education, learning and research are essential to the cultural, socio-economic, environmental, sustained development of individual, communities and the nations. The higher education is therefore confronted with so many challenges to make the most radical changes and the renewal undertaken. So it must take the lead in moving our society from the economic considerations to the deeper dimensions of the greater good for all the mankind, including the world peace. And in doing so, it must address the social needs, promote the solidarity, equity, and both preserve and exercise the academic, scientific rigor, originality, and impartiality. Now, the requirement that the higher education change substantially, that is, it enhances its quality and the relevance, it dictates the strong involvement of all the society including the higher education and its multiple stakeholders. The higher education must play the students at the center of its focus, a lifelong learning perspective, so that they integrated into the global knowledge society of the 21st century. The students must be considered as equal partners and the stakeholders in their own education, with the right to organize themselves and as they see fit within the context of their education institutes, systems and communities. More diversified international cooperation and exchange, it comprises the major avenues for advancing the higher education throughout the world and must include the use of the scholars, the students, cooperative research and enhanced information technology transfer. The access to the higher, despite possible limitations, going to the institutional and the governmental financial resources, potentially must be available to all qualified individuals regardless of the background of their personal characteristics. That is, when you talk about the resources which are available in the organization, they should be available to each and every student, irrespective from which ethnic background they are coming and the personal characteristics are concerned.